that point there by the rocks is where you come out, this lower portion from Maliko. Just getting eyes on it. Yesterday was super big for me. Just want to make sure I know what's happening. So. Yeah, we're looking out from the point just west of the Maliko start. Basically you start between these two white waters here. So you paddle out through this. There's a big swell rolling in. It doesn't look that big, but that's easily 6 foot. And down the coast. So you finished point down there, it's about 20 kilometers away, I guess, as far as the run goes. Kind of need to extrapolate the fact that that's a 6 foot wave and how big are these moving things out there. So yesterday I took out the 1070 40 and it felt great, not up and riding, but a bit of a mission to get going for me. I started really well, but in the middle the wind died a bit and trying to paddle up to these fast moving bumps with no wind assist. It took me about 10 to 11 minutes to do it. And I think I eventually did it because the squall came through and started giving me a push. Having that wind assist is really helpful. For giving your foil some activation and giving you stability. The in-between times, things like between paddle strokes or getting to your feet. So yeah, it's the Maliko run right now. In person, it's not showing up on the phone, it's just quite a thin speckling of white out there. Energy. So what I'm actually weighing up today is sizing up my front foil. I've done before and been over paddle, the 11/16. But I think that'll make getting off foil super easy. It will remove a lot of stress. And I'm thinking about sizing down my rear foil so that there's no loading perhaps. So either the 40, but potentially the 35. out, another big day at Maliko, running it solo today, although there'll be lots of other guys doing it. I'm just not meeting up with anyone. Alison's dropped me at the start, so that's pretty good. Yesterday I had a great run, but I came off foil and I couldn't get up for like 10 minutes, so I've sized up just to try and negate that, but I was perfectly foiled yesterday and I'm going to be over foiled today, so kept the 40 skinny the same. My setup is the 1160, 70 fuse, 40 skinny, and depending on how this feels in the big conditions, I might size down to the 35 skinny next time. See if that affects the pedal up. But I also thought about putting on the 1099 and I was very close, so it's all sizing them up next to each other, laying them on top. Trying to figure out what's what. Sticking with the fireballs and let's see what happens. Huge water yesterday, the biggest water I've been out in for the bumps. The bumps were just so crazy. So drawn out. A lot of water moving here. Wish me luck. Alright, there we go. Woo, big wave. Huge wave.
Welcome back.
Going into gust as usual.
A lot of water moving, a lot of water crossing that foil, creating instability. The water's moving, bouncing, reflecting off of the land, and that puts cross forces across your foil and can make the board rock. You definitely want as much energy as you can coming from straight behind you. These swells are probably coming at 45 degrees from over my right shoulder, so not too bad. I've learned since this, and I highly recommend doing a session with Jeremy Riggs, because one of the biggest takeaways for me was just getting to my feet and keeping that paddle blade in the water throughout the getting to your feet motion. And I can see I'm not doing that here. I'm sort of popping to my feet and then slapping the paddle into the water. And I'm totally unstable until that paddle gets in and I start dragging it through the water. Now when I get to my feet, I keep that paddle blade as close to the water as I can and I start activating with it as soon as I can. So a big lesson, and it's hard for me to watch this back. Like there, that blade should already be in the water. That was a nice easy paddle up though. Once everything is kind of square to the wind and you've got a nice narrow board and a foil with plenty of lift, it can be surprisingly easy to get on foil, especially when you understand a few of the techniques. Sounds windy, even though I'm running straight downwind. We got to see that opening scene footage. That was from this day. Lots of capping out there. The phone didn't pick up.
Just about breach, making sure you guys were there.
The phone wasn't picking up the white capping, even though you can see some. It was far more intense than the phone showed.
More bottom hands than yesterday. Find a way to use it.
So the day before this was my previous video where I used the 1070 and 40 skinny. And I had a good run, paddled up super easy, but I came down in the middle. And it was reasonably still with fast moving swell, and I really struggled to get up. And so I wanted to test the solution that I had in mind, which was to just size up my front foil. Which I believe now would have worked, but also it left me pretty loaded up, as we will see here in the riding. There's a comfort that can be found using different size foils, and the bigger foil will give you more comfort at lower end, but it will get a little bit stiff and scary, maybe touch locked in, not as much as the old style foils, but still locked in as you speed up. So the 1160, for example, that I'm using here in these conditions, if there's a bomb in front of me and I start bombing down, there's going to be a lot of tension in that system, and it's going to be hard to adjust, and it's going to require more input. And if you have to lean harder to make your movements, when an adjustment period happens and you're leaning hard and it changes, you're probably going to come off. Whereas a smaller foil will react faster, like the 1070 or 1000, and it doesn't require as heavy an input at those higher speeds comparative to the bigger foil. And so you're not forced to press through your system harder, and that allows you to adjust and adapt to extra water stimulus. So yeah, if it's really hard to start turning a system, you're having to lean hard. If there's a pocket of white water, a bump coming from another direction, and it gives you a wobble, if you're leaning hard heel side or toe side, you're probably coming off. So the smaller foil allows a lighter input and allows you to adjust easier without overbalancing, I guess, is what I'm saying. There's some beautiful drawn out seas here. I've turned downwind there. Bump has passed under me. I'm not chasing it. I'm just going to keep rolling off about 45 degrees behind it. Attaching more to these micro compared to the big swells, but these smaller contours. Trying to keep my foil at a slower speed. So not bombing, not chasing high end, but just chasing a pathway through this that allows me to continue at a comfortable speed. So, given that my foil is quite loaded up because of the size and speeds and the pressure, I think, of the bigger water, my system will just feel stiff here. It won't have that freedom of movement. And to control the stiff system, I personally need to use this wider stance. Some guys stand with their feet quite close together, but if you do that, I think with this setup in these conditions, it's just going to push you around like a bucking bull. So you need leverage to control it. Beautiful blue skies though. Blue water. Lots of energy. Just energy is key. You need something to ride. And then for me personally, I want to have the best system I can for riding the energy in the water. But my main goal is getting on foil. And if I sized to the exact setup that I want to ride, I may struggle to paddle that foil up and even get established. And so I need to weigh in the fact that I need to get on foil. What foil system is going to give me some stability whilst floating the board and trying to get up, and enough lift that I can get up at a slower speed because I might not be able to create the higher speed necessary to get up a smaller foil, and a foil that can counter my personal weight. So there's a lot of calculation that goes in. Yes, right now I'd love to be on maybe the 1000 fireball with the 35 skinny on the 70 fuse. But in the past I've struggled to paddle that system up. And for a longer run like this, I can't really experiment. I could, but I'm just not in for that level of pain that underfoiling brings, or being underfoiled brings. And so I size to a foil that I know will work. And I'm often testing. So today was a test with the 1160. Does it make paddling up easier? Can it still handle the bumps? And watching this and evaluating that again is great for me coming up to the M2O. I don't know what I'm going to face on the M2O, and I want to pick a system that will get me to the end. Doesn't necessarily need to be comfortable, but I need it to work for my level of energy and skills. And so I may not have the best optimal size for riding the bumps, but I will hopefully have the correct size for surviving the bumps, making distance with an ease of paddle up is my goal, because a race like that might be 70 or 80 kilometers on foil, and I'm going to get tired through that time period. And you can select sportier gear when you're fresh and on point and potentially don't have a long way to go. But if you have a proper journey planned, you need to be quite realistic with your energy levels throughout. Maybe I ace it and I paddle up once and I ride and it's clean. Best case scenario, then I might regret picking a bigger foil. But if it's hard and tricky to paddle up, and with this M2O series, there's a potential for 140 boats to be running down that race course. So already that's some tricky water to navigate. So I'm putting a lot of thought into overall systems, and something like this, testing the 1160 in reasonably big conditions. And in fact, coming up will be the biggest day that I rode the Maliko, where it was a huge groundswell with 30 to 40 knot wind. I also use the 1160. So just knowing that works and I can survive with it in the biggest conditions means that it becomes a possibility to choose that for a longer run. The downside potentially of the bigger foil will be it's more fatiguing to ride, even though it's less fatiguing to paddle up. And I will have to weigh that up. I'll have to weigh that up too, given that the majority of that travel will be on foil. So it's a very fine line, fine balance for success. Not sure what the rules are, but I'm going to potentially take different stabilizer options for the M2O. just carry them in a little bag or something. But yeah, on screen I mentioned I'm riding the bumps between the bumps. So I'm avoiding the big ones, the big drops. And given the bigger size foil, I've got the bottom end to travel the smaller bumps. I've been having to think about my personal weight. I've gained a few kilos since this run. And on some days I'm 88 kilos, 89 kilos even. And my board is 110 litres, so that gives me 22 litres, 21 litres of float, positivity. And when you take into consideration the weight of the board, the weight of the foil, and the weight of your gear and wetsuit, this board is starting to get a little bit sporty, a little bit sinky. So I'm at the point now where I actually need to consider sizing up, and I've been talking to Frank about what I want from a race board. I'm going to get Frank to build me a custom for the races. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about the dimensions. And I've come up with what I think is good dimensions for me. And the only unfortunate thing about the whole situation is I'm trying to factor in travel with the board.
Straight downwind when there's no bomb.
So just mention there, happy to travel straight downwind when there's no big bumps. The ocean's always serving up different pathways and stimuli out there. So the only handicap to my board sizing will be a board that I can potentially travel with on the plane. So I'm basically stuck to that 9-foot length as a maximum. If I wasn't, I think I would go 9.4 for a board that
We're looking for plateaus.
is forgiving for balance and takeoff. And Frank's boards are designed in a way that you don't get much swing weight. You don't get a sense of swing weight. There's not a whole lot of volume in the back end foot length of the board, or the nose front foot of the board. So a 9-foot board feels like a 7-foot board, for example, once you're up and foiling. Was it a planned landing?
Okay, made a bad decision. Now we're standing on the water, so we'll try to get up again.
No, it was not.
Seems to be in a good spot, made good ground downwind. Feeling good.
Sometimes I'll bring the board down to the surface of the water just to escape a hairy situation. So you don't have to just fall off your board, you can actually bring it down off foil even when loaded up. If you can, it's probably the most civilized way of coming off foil rather than jumping off your board. You'll see the speedo here is upside down. I've flipped the image because my camera is upside down. Just mentioned that I don't need to rush it, so I'm probably feeling out.
Wait for a good wind gust with the top.
So I'm waiting for wind for one, so that I get free travel downwind, free forward speed. Wind is great for that. And the other thing I want to feel out is the forces on the board while I'm kneeling there. Is it kicking to the left or the right? Is it tick-tocking around? Is it reasonably true? What part of the bump is causing me to travel forward at its fastest rate? How much space is there between bumps? How much time is there between big bumps or small bumps? Lots going on, lots to think about, and you don't need to just rush to your feet and get on foil straight away. I mean, ideally you will if you can. But sometimes it's good to step back, sit down, paddle downwind, and just feel what's going on out there. Failed attempt. Trying to find some space to paddle up on foil. So that peak's just hit me. Well, that peak pushed me onto foil. So those are really nice takeoffs, those. It's like catching a wave, and the peak passes under you, pushes you forward, and with a little bit of your own input, you can peel the board off the water and start foiling. Often I tell people to follow a peak and try paddle up within the trough, but there's also the method that I just employed that I've used quite a bit also, which is the water will actually catch you and give you a surge, and in that surge, if you're in balance, if you can maintain your balance, and what can be good there is getting low, squatting down, and have the paddle ready or be paddling. Oh, spicy. You can turn that forward speed into lift, into takeoff. So be open to experimenting with your takeoffs. There's not just one right way of doing it. There'll be a lot of options. Whatever works for you will work for you. Don't just blindly follow other people's advice. Do your own. Do your own testing out there. Try your own ideas.
Elevator drop.
So I'm wearing a top here. It's like a 2mm top, flat lock seams. I'm in Hawaii, so I don't really need the top for temperature, all going well. But if there was any issues and I was out to sea for a bit longer, then I think a top like this would help you to stay warm. Probably not much warmer, but somewhat. It does also offer protection from sun and abrasion. And it's the first line of defense for cuts and whatnot. So if you got hit by the foil, there's potential that the wetsuit top will protect you a little bit.
Taking the path of the left amount of wall. So far I've had a good option each time. Don't know what I'm going to do if both sides have a wall. We go downwind for a little bit here.
So yeah, I'm seeing some steep water around me and trying to avoid it. And often I'll be traveling in a direction and there'll be a steep section coming. I can turn away from it. And then I was just questioning what happens when you turn away from it and you're faced with steep water on the other side. And one thing you can do in that is just land your board. bring it down. You probably can't fall off, but it's the safest way to fall off rather than an explosion. There's a caveat to that, and that is distance from your board is good when falling. If you can kick your board away from you without it rebounding into you, that's great. Distance is good, but then you're completely relying on your tether to that board to keep that board with you. And with enough force, who knows? Leashes break, waist straps come off, ankle straps come off, whatever. And so I'm a firm believer of looking after, keeping your craft with you. I do that when I'm surfing, regular style surfing. I never kick out my board. I always try and come down on my board in a controlled manner. At the end of a wave, I definitely don't dive off into the water. I'll try sit down onto the board, because this board really is your first line of defense out in the water. It will be your craft for getting home. If you had to pick between your board and your paddle, clearly you want your board. And if you are separated from your board and paddle, go to your board first. Your board will be everything to you. So forget the paddle. If you can get hold of your board, you can go find your paddle later. Don't waste any time separated from your board trying to get your paddle first. Get to your board. Try and regain control of it. I've had it happen, and I've seen it happen, and I've seen people going for their paddle first while their board disappears, and then I see them swimming to their board, paddle in hand, or throwing the paddle in the direction of the board as they go. And that's probably the worst approach in my opinion. So board first. And I've always got a personal locator beacon on me. I believe they're excellent. I've not had to use one. I have friends that have used them. So, and have used them successfully. So I highly recommend, if you are going offshore, taking a PLB with you, or some sort of locator beacon. Don't just rely on your friends or a phone. Have a backup for your backup. Have a button that you can press. But back to this run, some stretched out water there. Lots of tension in that water when it stretches out, when it's clean. The foil, it feels like true energy when it's stretched out. There's no strange inputs coming up through your legs, but it also feels quite draggy when it's clean like that. Just a lot of tension on the setup. When it's quite messy like this, I think there's less tension because there's different energy negating each other. And that kind of leaves you ready for when you're in messy sections like this. You are prepared and you are reacting to a lot of that. Oops. You're there actively dealing with the energy at the time.
I chickened out of the walls around me then. I had to come off oil.
If that's true, maybe go back and just check. From memory, it was steep on both sides, and instead of taking the drop, I just came off foil. different setups, I'll probably take the drops or a different level of knowledge. But I've also taken drops out there, especially on the Maliko, that you have steep water drawing out in front of you and you go for a drop in and you just can't get to the bottom and it keeps recreating in front of you and you spend a lot of time at the top end of your speeds and it is awfully exciting. And I'm not always ready for that, and especially if I'm overfoiled. Good for fitness though, having to paddle up a few times on a run. Keeping the foil at the paddle at the ready. I must have gotten comfortable.
Concentrate.
I do lose concentration out there. I can start daydreaming, losing focus, or
Make sure you don't get the best view.
thinking about the camera, or just thinking about some beta, and then forgetting about what I'm actually doing. Oh. Beep. Stuck in a bad spot there and I was having to survival pump out and it didn't work. Not ideal after just paddling up. That's a tax on your energy system. Paddling up, getting on foil, and then coming off again. But this is one of the privileges of going alone, is you don't have to keep up with somebody. There's no pressure to get going straight away. I am on the clock somewhat because Alison will be picking me up at the other end, and I don't want her to have to wait for me. That was a nice easy paddle up. That's the beauty of the bigger front foil. Fast, 31 k's there I saw. I paddled up and I was probably in a position where I had to take a drop. Often after paddling up, you're not in your most optimal position in the oceanscape, and you just got to make it work. Get to somewhere comfortable. We have gone to paddle at the ready mode again. See that good size swell on the left side of the screen there? Big water. You can see that wave creeping up behind me. comfortable enough to film here somewhat. I'm thinking about the camera, but I have not extended the paddle, so I'm only halfway there. Looks a bit messy here. Not overly relaxed, focused. Really using every iota of that foot pad with my back foot. It's hard to know why this part is causing me to concentrate. I have a feeling I could be on the side of the reef, which tends to slow the water down, and maybe the patterns are slightly different all of a sudden. Could be many things. Could be that I'm tired after doing 2 paddle ups in quick succession, and that I need to try and make this paddle up count while I can. And I don't want to risk coming down again, so I want the paddle at the ready. So that I can regulate my energy system. Some intensity here. If I had to guess, I would think that I'll start liking the end section because the water does slow down and steepen up, which suits having the slower foil than the...
Need my pedal, guys. Not very often I take foiling over the filming, but today I am.
Exciting.
I'll get back to you.
And I clearly haven't forgotten about everybody. You. Pedal drag is handy for balance location. You can lean on it when it skids like that, and it just gives you a sense of where you are. If you can touch the water, you're probably riding a bit lower, so you know where you are on your mast. You might be you can use the paddle to slow you down even, if needed. Just create some sensory awareness. Yeah, the wonderful thing about Maliko is you get all of this as well as a blue sky. In New Zealand, if you're getting these conditions, everything's going to be grey, it's going to be stormy, you probably can't see anything. It's a very different scenario. Alright, I'm sounding calmer. Relaxed enough to talk. Which makes me think I'll get back to filming for soon.
It was much easier having a paddle at the ready. Oh, we'll just enjoy it for now, guys, don't worry.
Yeah, it's hard to say if the 1160 has been a success there. I think so. Having that confidence to paddle up easier is very powerful out there. I feel a bit dizzy after that. But happy to see the regular viewing. Good drop there, but it doesn't look like I'm going to make it. Fading off.
Okay.
Oh dear.
Abandoned ship on that one. Control fall. Got the reef under me. We're going to take this off.
So there, yeah, I exited the board. Decided to remove myself from the system. Fall into soft water. Trusted my tether.
Okay, I think it's a straight shot back this time, so that's good. We'll go straight and left. I think stuff will get slower, a bit smaller, hopefully.
Something that just crossed my mind. Like, I think the conditions were tricky for me here, but also the day before this I was riding big swell, high intensity, and I have a feeling I'm just tired. There could be many factors in why I'm struggling a bit on this run. But it reminds me that having good rest and good rests between your training stimulus and activity stimulus is really important. Hydration, refueling. Don't know what happened there. Breathing is a big one. It's what I've been working on recently. Breathing throughout the paddle up sequence. It's definitely messy water there. The main thing is stay calm out there. I'm probably slightly frantic in these paddle up attempts. Like everyone else, I do err on wanting to be on foil rather than on my board floating. But I do know better most of the time, and I will relax, try to lower heart rate and not be in a rush to get on foil, depending on the situation. But you definitely don't want to stress your energy system to the point of total fatigue. There's potential for no coming back from that. You can drain your system, and you might just overstrain and drain your stability muscles, stabilizers, and then you're really going to have a hard time standing on your board in ocean conditions. So stay calm, be sensible with your energy, try and let your aerobic system work.
Kind of become the right speed, and
Be efficient. So yeah, I'm going bigger for my M2O board.
Helicopter, sightseeing the Downwind drifter.
And my focus on the board is a board that I want stability. That's the main focus. And I will size it up so that that stability doesn't cost too much performance. So I'm going wider as well as longer for my ocean journeys and more leaders. But just mentioned that the water's slowing up here, so this is heading towards the inside now. A lot of the energy is getting blocked by shallower water, drags the energy out of it. Sometimes it starts standing up a little bit more, a little bit steeper sections, right towards the end, but actually on the reef it often takes a lot of height out of it too, as well as slowing it down. It could be to do with currents as well, and perhaps the water accelerates as it gets squeezed through the shallower sections of reef, and that might mean that you have wind with current at that point, a faster current, which would give you a perceived lessening of energy. Even though potentially you might end up travelling faster. The apparent speed probably feels slower, but the ground speed is probably faster.
We're back, baby.
But I can see a shift here in my body. I look like I'm less tense, less stiff. And just that little shift in body tension can really help you absorb the conditions and ride better. If you're stiff like a twig, you know, from stress or whatever, or trying hard, it can really disrupt your balance. So staying low, lowering your center of gravity is always good for balance. Staying athletic, staying supple. And those are things you can potentially do by just thinking about them out there. But the thing is, you need it to come to mind. So maybe you need a little checklist of things to relax you out there. If things are getting tough, maybe you need some ABCs or something that you can go through. And to just reassess, realign yourself with what you're doing. Remove yourself from fight or flight or survival mode. Start having fun again. Because it is big water and a big ocean. And if you're not having fun, it could be quite scary. And when you're foiling, it's great. You're moving fast to your destination. You're not out there forever. It's a very exciting and pleasurable experience, sometimes type 2. But if you're stuck floating on your board and you can't get on foil and you're out there for longer than you had planned or wanted or want, it doesn't take long before the ocean switches to a inhospitable environment. So yeah, tough run for me, this one. Somewhat. Came off foil a handful of times. Some stressful riding. Definitely overfoiled for sections. But then like this part here is quite messy and I'm probably pretty happy to be on that foil that I'm on. The bigger foil. But if I was on a smaller foil, I could probably have taken a wider line, stayed in the bigger water out wide, away from the reef, and cut in later. But at this stage now, I don't think I'm avoiding anything. I'll be looking for any drops, anything. Anything's on the table here. These bumps here I can see are closer together, so I would actually struggle to run straight downwind with them because I'll be running into uphills and variations. And I can see I am riding down the line of a lot of these bumps. And here the groundswell is actually probably aligning somewhat with my destination. It's a nice long downhill, but it's passed under me, forcing me to turn away, down the line again, turn straight behind it. Turtle. Well, I can see it drawing out on the left there. So definitely still some good energy there. I'm running into an uphill there. Behind the crest. Getting some travel, but I'm going to have to turn away, as I did. Look for something familiar that passes by that I can fall behind and follow. Looks like a good one, turn behind it. Looks like I'm going to overrun it and get to the one in front. And just have a nice continuous section, but it eventually passed under me, so I have to turn away again. Straight back behind though as soon as I can, follow that one that just passed under me. This one's passing under me. Can I point downhill? No, have to turn off. Could probably pump in that situation and try and catch up to it, but it's going to eventually overrun you if you're slower than it. Nice peak there on the left, just gone past. Turning behind. So this is quite straightforward riding for me, just fading bumps, turning behind them, like letting them pass me by and then just following them for a bit until the one behind does the same thing. Quite repetitive. All the while looking for something steep to do a turn on, or always keeping an eye out for that, but also I have a destination, so I'm trying to pick paths that will take me to where I need to go. That's harbour entrance straight above my head, to the right a touch. And you often get some nice bumps around this section, only for a bit because it's going to start getting bouncy with the energy hitting that rock wall. But you do get some pretty cool steep sections here, and the water does stand up and touches in part. Although I might have missed that point. Following Frank's advice and heading to the left side of the gate, so that if I do come off foil, I have a chance to paddle up on foil again and still make the entrance. If you aimed, I know some guys aim for the right side of the gate. It does give you a better line and cleaner water, but if you come off foil and you were heading to the right end, you might have to paddle in, because getting on foil might take you past the entrance. And from what I've heard, you don't want to go past the entrance. I've not done it yet. But I would have to assume there'll be some energy coming into the harbour here that should make the riding somewhat straightforward on the inside. Often there is a lot of pumping. So I mean, I'm inside the harbour here. So you can imagine that this section of water has been designed to not be rough. And yet there's still plenty of energy flowing in. So that just shows what's going on the outside, that it can make it in here. And some of my first experiences in Maui were sup foiling inside this harbour. And I was just so excited by it, the fact that there was great waves inside this nice safe section of water. Felt very secure. Didn't feel like I was going to get dragged out to sea or have to worry about anything, and there was just a nice, fun, rolling, playful wave. I was unsure though of what was underneath, if there were any rocks or how far could I surf in. So at the time that was an unknown, but I have since learned a lot about this area. You can see the rocks under the water there, so it is quite shallow at this section. This is often where the surfers will sit when there is proper waves coming in. And to the left of me is more of a boat channel. Haleakala just behind the speedo there. Huge piece of land on Maui, very tall, up country. A lot of people live up there. And then that looks alright. Got in pretty easy, not too much pumping, a little bit at the end. Well done. If you've watched it this far. Get some stats coming up soon. I can tell you that I am likely very happy to be inside the harbour here. Overall a good run, but probably some stress there. My eyes are telling a bit of a story there. They've seen something. They saw some shit on this run. But that is all lessons learned and adds to your, if nothing else, character, but it adds to your knowledge base and experience, and you can use that to counter new information, stimulus. But it's all in all just another day in the life of downwinding. They're not always easy. There's Maui, the run there on the left. They're not always easy. Sometimes they are easy. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 falls. Not too high of a speed there. Average pace under 3 minutes per kilometre, even with the falls. One best kilometre, missed it. 2:19 there. Okay, 2:19 looks like the fastest K there. Allison's picking me up. Harper. Who's Harper? Thanks for watching. Took a bit longer than usual to get this one out. Been quite busy. How good is that, getting treated with a drink as you arrive? Well done, guys. Be good, hydrate, stretch, go call your friends, go touch base with everybody. Let everyone know that you're alive, check that they're alive. Be good.